Hello, welcome to Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, and very excitingly, Games Workshop have just showed the new War Scroll format for Age of Sigmar 4. Now, I know what you're saying, Rob. I'm not that interested in War Scrolls, but there's actually loads of cool information. I was a bit fast, I'm sorry. But there is a lot of cool information in this article about what the game is going to look like in the future. Also, some kind of spicy looks at what some abilities are going to be looking like in the future as well as, I hope, not too many changes. So let's go and have a look straight away. Thank you to everyone on the Twitch chat who's joined me live while we're talking about this. Thanks to everyone on the Wargamer Patreon, which you can join. And if you do join, we have a very active Discord talking about Age of Sigmar 4, faction chats, and all that other stuff. So please do jump in if you can. Okay, so the anatomy of a War Scroll in the edition has changed. We're going to skip what they've said and we're going to jump straight in and look at our unit of Liberators. Now, the big change that you can see here is to two different sections. At the top, it has our movement value, and the unit moves 5 inches. Perfect. And each model in this unit, now, Liberators normally come as units of 5. However, it doesn't actually say it on the War Scroll, so there will have to be a separate reference point for how many models per unit. Age of Sigmar pretty much works along the lines of, you buy a box of models, if there's 5 in there, the unit is as big as 5. If there's 7 in there, it's 7. If it's 3, it's 3. That's how it works. So however many models are in the box is normally however many models come in the unit. And in Age of Sigmar, as we learned in the regiments video, we can only reinforce a unit once now unless they're unique. What this means is if you buy a box and it's a box of 5 models, you can buy a second box, that'll be a unit of 10. That's as big as the unit can be. Perfect. Although it's not on the War Scroll, therefore, it might be on the other side of the War Scroll, which is kind of what you get in 40k. It might also be located where the points are, or everything isn't on one page. So there we go. Anyway, 5 models in a unit, and each model has got 2 health. 2 health. Used to be called wounds, but you had a situation in the past where I would roll to wound. I would say, I have done those. You must make your saves. Your saved would turn into damage, and then the damage would cause wounds. So I would say, I've done 3 wounds to you. And you'd be like, I take 3 wounds off, and I've got 7 wounds. You would just say the word wound a lot. So now what you have, you do damage points, and those damage points are going to remove your health. If you do all of the health, if you do all the damage points to remove the health off a model, that model is slain and it's taken off the board. Perfect. Easy peasy. So that's what health is. That's the health of each model in that unit. The move is the move characteristic, and then we have the save value, which is what you make against the attacks. A save is affected by rend, which you can see in this little section here. I should make this bigger. Rend. So if you were to attack a Liberator with another Liberator, that save value would go from 3 up to a 4 because it's rend 1. And then this new stat, which is very exciting, that each model in this unit is going to count for contesting objectives as 1. This is similar and on par with what we see in 40k. And 40k has different units, have different control values. Some units in 40k even have a control value of 0. I really like this change for Age of Sigmar because this adds more design space to contesting objectives. I love the idea that you can have a unit that is legitimately just better at holding objectives because it has big shields, because it plants a flag, whatever it might be. And I think that's really cool. That really lets you do something more around the mechanic of holding and grabbing objectives. Objectives are smaller in this edition. We covered that in a previous video. They're 3 inches from a 40mm objective marker, so they're smaller, and there's going to be some problems with that, with large base models and some other stuff, but we'll cover those in the future. This is a cool little change, though, and you're going to be able to do some more really fun stuff with it. And also, I love the idea of objective control 0 units that can do some fun things. So very, very cool. So that's the basic stuff. Over here, we have obviously the title of the unit. And then a bit that isn't noted for some reason is it tells you what the unit is armed with. Each model in this unit is armed with a Warhammer. 1 in 5 models can replace their Warhammer with a Grand Hammer. The champion cannot replace their weapon. So no longer putting your champion with the special weapon. We don't know as of yet know what the champion does, but they have said that champions, banner bearers, and musicians across all units will be like a universal special rule. So a champion might have an extra wound, extra attack. We currently don't know what that looks like. Now, there is an issue here in that if you are a keen-eyed Age of Sigmar fan or excited about the new edition, you know that the Liberator units have been showcased with having 2 hammers, as you can see the picture down here, or even having a hammer and a shield. So what's the situation? Are we going to get a separate war scroll for those? It seems, via the social media people, that this isn't the truth. Alex Whitehead on Facebook asked, have the new Liberators with shields shown yesterday been squatted already? The follow-up was, whether you choose to model them with a shield or 2 hammers, they use the same profile. Another question was asked, exactly the same. Yep, the only models that will need to be visually distinct are the one wielding a grand hammer and your champion. Now, I have my opinions on this, but I would love to know what all of you watching think. Comments below in what you think. The chat have been pretty serious and let me know that they think that it's a better change for people. A lot of people get analysis paralysis. You buy a new kit and you're like, oh, spears or swords? What do I do? What's better? I have a long conversation I think I could have about that another day, but we've got a lot to get through in this, so I think I'll cover that in another episode. But let me know today in the comments below what you think, so I can just kind of absorb that information. And, if you've got any questions, ask me about it, and we'll cover that in the future. But it looks like you can build them in any way that you want, and they'll have the same rules. Perfect. Okay, so what rules do they have? We've got the attack profile, and it says here they've got a Warhammer with 2 attacks, 3s, rend 1, damage 1, and they do something called a critical mortal. And I would like to suggest that we forever call these critical hittos. Now, they have said in a future article, well, further down, which we'll cover in a moment, they said that there are 7 different weapon special rules. And I think that what we're going to see is exactly what we see in 40k. We're going to get 6s to hit are going to do a mortal damage. They've changed it from mortal wound to mortal damage. 6s to wound are probably going to have increased rend, or they're going to again do mortal damage. I think what we're going to have is exploding 6s, or in 40k they're called sustained hits, so that you roll a 6 to hit and you'll have 2 wound dice versus not 2 wound dice. We'll probably have what we have in 40k, where it's not called Nemesis X, but it's called something X, where effectively, let's say the Liberators were attacking a monster unit, so they had Monster X. Normally, as you can see with the Warhammer, it wounds on a 3. However, if you find a monster, maybe it wounds on a 2 because it's good at fighting against monsters. This is quite a fun little kind of like keyword battle and a really good way of expressing narrative rules. For instance, you could have like a monster hunting unit that against other units wound on 5s, but they're specifically good at fighting monsters, so wound on 2s. I think that's quite fun. I like that. It hasn't worked overly well in 40k because the combination between to hits to wounds and the different like sustained abilities that they gave, unfortunately, created a real problem that they had to go back and rewrite the rules. But let's just kind of throw that to the window and imagine that they've learned that lesson from that time, and this could be really fun, really narrative, really interesting. And it also means you don't have to necessarily learn what all of the different weapon profiles do. Oh, does this one do mortals on 6s to hit? And they're all in there. And most importantly, I get to keep using this noise for the entire edition. And that's probably the win, to be honest. Now, there's also an ability. We're going to come back to that in a moment. But at the bottom, we have our classic keywords. We have infantry and champion. We know this unit's got a champion, and it's also got the infantry keyword. And I think, like I've said, when we see stuff that's got keyworded good against infantry, this is where this is going to come into play. Also means that when you have other abilities like spells or, other stuff that we're going to see in the game, they're going to affect the infantry keyword or some other keywords, cavalry, monsters, etc. Also underneath it, you can see a much more streamlined set of keywords. Order, which is the Grand Alliance they're from, Stormcast Eternals, which is the faction, and then Warrior Chamber. But as we saw again in the Regiments video, they talked about the fact that there is going to be no sub-factions. So no sub-faction keyword locked onto these guys, and instead, these are just Warrior Chamber. Also on this War Scroll, well, when we look at Nagash's War Scroll, it doesn't say who unlocks this unit to be inside of a regiment. I assume that's somewhere else. Lastly, they have here the ability that this unit has. And you'll note that this ability is color-coded and it's also picture-coded. So it's purple, which means it's at the end of the turn, as I've already learned all of my colors. And it's also a circle, which means it's a objective control ability, because I've learned all of my pictures. This will be a video that I'm going to make exclusively for Patreon, where I'm just going to I did this for Old World as well, where I'm just going to read through all the colors and the symbols as a very simple, easy to watch video and podcast, and you can just learn them through osmosis, which is a fun little thing to do. Anyway, what this does is it adds 3 to this unit's objective control, and it does say the control score, not the control statistic. So this would be 5 models at control 1 plus 3 from stalwart defenders, which is fun. Okay, let's talk about colors and symbols, shall we? Because, oh boy, okay? We're going to talk about this. Control score is what you're going to use to capture an objective, which is what I talked about before. Okay. Weapons have seen a few subtle changes, but they still function in more or less the same way. In melee, 5 key attributes functions before. Attacks, hit, wound, rend, damage. Although they've all been carefully rebalanced for a new edition, although they seem to be exactly the same as they were previously. Liberators hit hard for basic troops, especially given their ability. One of the 7 universal special abilities. So 7 universal weapon abilities. And I think it's that list that I talked about before, but let me know what you think they're going to be in the comments below. It has a simple effect. An unmodified 6 to hit counts as a critical hit, and this ability turns into mortal damage. Okay? However, while missile weapons still have a range, albeit generally reduced, every model can now fight within 3 inches of combat range in melee. So, missile weapons may get much smaller in the game, which is a massive positive because of, again, a previous video I made about power projection. In Age of Sigmar and 40k, power projection of a melee unit is how far it can move, how far it can charge, and its ability to fight. Missile weapons almost always have a distinct advantage in that you have the move plus shoot ability. Therefore, normally their ability to project power or damage is much more increased. So reducing that down is great because melee have always struggled because of how far you can shoot in the game. So I love that. I hope that continues. The fighting within 3 inches is more simplified. I think new people will be excited about that. Finally, there are redesigned abilities. Our Liberators have a thing we talked about. Okay, the turn phases. Why they chose these colors in this order will be a mystery to everyone for the whole of time, but I love it. So there we go. We have the start of the turn, the hero phase remains, where it looks like, based on one other war scroll we're about to talk about, they're maintaining spellcasting. We have movement, shooting phase, charge phase, combat phase, and end of turn. Of course, look at this and I'll let you know that I'm going to do things in the orange phase. This is, to me, a little silly, but hilarious. Also, in Age of Sigmar, as stands, each of these phases is subdivided, but not by intent. So I'm hoping the core rules is also numbered. For instance, I hope the charge phase has 3.1, 3.2, 3.5, because each one of these phases does indeed have, like, I guess, another color. You know, like you will have the start of the charge phase, the middle of the charge phase, and the end of the charge phase. So I'm really hoping that we see some sort of numbered system to go through that versus colors. I think that would be really good. And also, yes, this isn't in any way beneficial or helpful to colorblind people. I wish that they would think that through, but here we are. I think 8% of the population are colorblind. Then we got ability icons, and these are movement ability, offense ability, defensive ability, shooting ability, rallying ability, yikes, special ability, and a control ability. Special ability is the one that I absolutely love because that's just complete catch-all. It's just a special ability. Does it reference anything else? It's just special. I love that they've given themselves the room to just have any old ability in there, which is cool. So it's going to be a mixture. Abilities that you see on War Scrolls are going to be a combination of a color and a symbol. So you're going to have to learn those in conjunction with the rules. But hopefully, if you do, that's a really quick, easy reference point for you in the future. I think that's what they're hoping for. I wonder what everyone else thinks. Okay, let's go look at a complicated War Scroll with Nagash. Now, like the Liberators, with the exception of them having a slightly better save, Nagash has got almost an identical War Scroll in his movement, health, armor save, and control value is different. Although, hilariously, his control value is exactly identical to what his his bravery was. But that doesn't matter. 18 wounds with 3-up save, move 10. He's obviously the god of death. This is a big deal. And he has got a good attack profile, which is incredibly similar to his old attack profile, which means I would suspect when we see all of the War Scrolls come out, I'd expect most of the War Scrolls that exist right now to have exactly the same profiles that they do in the new edition, with some of the things cleaned up with you getting critical hitos, critical woundos, and some of those other special abilities added onto the weapon profiles. But I think we're going to see very similar wound amounts, armor saves, and movement characteristics, in my opinion. Now, where it does get spicy and different is we get a ton of different abilities. His War Scroll, while similar to what it was previously, is very different in abilities. First thing I'll talk about is some of the keywords are locked at the bottom. He has unique, which is great. It means you can only take one of him in an army. He's a hero, which is a good keyword. A monster, which is another great keyword. And then he has wizard, and then in brackets 9. Almost certain this is what is referred to later on as his power level, which means he can cast 9 spells. Can he dispel 9 spells or dispel unlimited? We have no idea right now. We'll find out in the future. He also has the fly keyword, which means he can fly, which I'm sure will be written out in full in the core rules. And then he has a 5+ ward save, which is located on here. That's nice. Another thing pointed out by my friend Tristan in the chat that I like about the War Scrolls is that all of the abilities are boxed out. Very nice. I can just look between the different sections, and because they're color coded, that means I can jump between the sections that I need. Although, unfortunately, in order to fit into whatever design spec they had, that everything had to fit on one side of a page, they didn't put them in like chronological order, which I think would have been the healthiest way to do that. Instead, purple, which is at the end of the turn, is third, if that makes sense. So it would have been fun to have seen them actually put them chronologically, but I understand it. It wouldn't have fit. So there we go. So let's have a look at what his abilities are. Effect, he has a passive ability, which is all the time. Well, this unit has 10 or more damage points, which is just damage. You subtract 3 from its power level, which is its casting, how many spells it can cast. Again, it can cast 9, so it's going to go down to casting 6. There's a passive ability, which is done in the hero phase, which is gold, I think, is the hero phase. And then he has a passive ability, which is special. That's what that little symbol means, which is his Staff of Power, where he adds 2 to the casting rolls for this unit, while this unit is not miscasting spells this turn. So he's going to add +2 to that cast. If this unit miscasts a spell, ignore the restriction that would stop this unit from casting more spells. So we know miscasts are still in there as well. He has his own special rampage. Rampage is a keyword down here, and it's done at the end of the turn because it's done in purple. This is Hand of Dust, which is wild. You pick an enemy hero or monster, and the effect is you do what his spell used to do, where you put a dice in one of 2 hands, your opponent picks one. If they pick the wrong hand, that model is just wiped out the board. It used to be a spell. It's now done at the end of any turn constantly, which means he goes from potentially doing it for 5 spells to doing it into 10 combats, if he can be in combat every round with enemy heroes and monsters. So it could be very, very powerful, which is spicy, but he's the God of Death. He's also got another spicy ability, which is once per battle, which is a rally ability done in the hero phase, flag, and also the color. See, I've learned them. I know. You declare, you pick a friendly non-hero, non-unique death unit that's been destroyed by the target. The effect is you set up a placement unit identical to the target, wholly in 12-inch unit, and more than 9-inch from one of them units. Doesn't seem to be many restrictions on that. In this game now, you can't double reinforce units, so you can't have like 30 of something. Well, unless you have a unit of 15 to start. But normally you'll have like a 10 of something, you can reinforce it to a 20. That's the maximum reinforcements you get. However, you can take a very expensive unit, let's say like Morghast Archive, which is a unit of 2, reinforce it to a unit of 4, and you could bring that whole unit back once per battle, which potentially is like 400 points-ish. Again, everything could change. We don't know any more info. And then he's got the Invocation Nagash. There's a spicy little 7 number on the side. I'm almost certain that that's the casting value. You're going to have to roll a 7 or above in order to cast the spell. And you declare this unit can cast a spell more than once per phase, so multiple spell casts. Pick a visible unit wholly within 18 inches, which is pretty important, and that has not been picked to be the target of this spell, so you can't affect a unit more than once. If the target is an enemy unit, inflicts D3 mortal damage to it. If the target is a friendly death unit, pick one of the following effects. You can return a slain number of models up to 3, or they can have a 5-up ward save. So he could just be like 5-up ward save, 5-up ward save, 5-up ward save, or he could be like D3 damage, D3 damage, D3 damage across the army, and he's going to get 9 choices. So there's a lot of options for what he can do, although not massive amounts of options. I'm sure he'll also have access to other spells from the spell lore that's available for Ossiarch Bone Reapers, which is something else I guess we should talk about. Down here it does say Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and it says in a little note that he's going to have a different war scroll for each of the factions that he can be inside of. Obviously, he can be inside Nighthorn, be inside Nighthorn, be inside Soulblight Gravelords. The big question is Nagash going to have like a completely separate war scroll, as in like different abilities because he's in Nighthawk now and they want to give him like different flavor? Or is it just going to be a change of keywords? I personally think it'll be a change of keywords. The other unique keyword in here, which I think is really fun, is the Warmaster keyword. Again, talking about the regiments video, I guessed at the fact that Warmaster generals or Warmasters might be able to take a regiment, and that regiment can have 4. Normally, your general can have 4 units in it, when the normal hero can only have 3. A Warmaster might be able to have 4. Also, it doesn't say anywhere on the War Scroll which units are unlocked for his regiment. And Warmaster just might mean any units can go in his regiment. But it, as of yet, doesn't say, and it doesn't say anywhere on this sheet. So maybe there's a reverse side where it tells you what units you can put inside a Nagash regiment. And that normally is something, and that's something we covered heavily in the regiment video, so go watch that if that sounds a little confusing. And that's it. There's so much more stuff to kind of like deep dive, but until we know more information, we won't know exactly what all of it means. So some of this is guesswork, but a lot of it is really interesting. We're seeing a change to how we control objectives. We're seeing a change to the abilities and the phasing of abilities. But it's also not too different. It doesn't feel too dissimilar to what Age of Sigmar feels like in the past. So now it's time for you to tell me what you think. I'm going to keep making videos about Age of Sigmar 4, leading up to Age of Sigmar 4, and post Age of Sigmar 4, I'm going to make a load of videos as well. Hope you can join me on this journey. It'd be cool if you could support me on Patreon. Thanks for your support. Thanks for subscribing, liking, comment on the video. Hope you've appreciated this video so far. As always, I try to read as many comments as I can, so please do leave them, and thanks for watching this video.